spent about 50 hours with Paulson. What were the characteristics that you think enabled him to again have the stamina and succeed in placing this trade? Because it definitely, he really felt very strongly about it, but he was out there at a time trying to raise money when it was difficult. As you talk about and he talked about, he'd be out there telling this great story, and he was had a great pitch.
Right.
But people are like, hey, I'm making double, triple my money in real estate overnight. Why would I come into a situation betting against something that I'm making all this money on?
Yeah, John Paulson's a really fascinating guy. He has this confidence in himself that I'm not sure most people can match. And when he does the research and he develops a position, he sticks with it. And he likes to his credit, he listens and he asks for people on the other side. And he brought in all kinds of Wall Street experts to come in and to his firm and sit down and see what they got wrong. And he challenged his team. He had these Wall Street experts challenge the team. But basically they all thought he was a fool on Wall Street, and he didn't care. He had this confidence in himself that he just wanted to hear what they had to say, and he wasn't moved by their lack of by their questions about him and their criticisms. So A, he's got this unbelievable confidence. B, he doesn't fall in love with a position.
Right.
And that I find as an individual investor is one of the biggest mistakes people make. I find it fascinating. There's also almost this coldness that top investors like John Paulson have in terms of they'll make a lot of money on a position. And in this case, John Paulson in 2007 shorted housing, and then in 2008 shorted financials, and then he turns on a dime in early this year and starts buying some of the same positions, be it Bank of America or some commercial real estate, CMBS. And I find that remarkable and impressive. Is this sort of coldness in a positive way that they can look at a position without bringing too much to the table. Yeah, I shorted it last year, but now I'm not going to just cut short my position. I'm actually going to go long it. I find that pretty impressive. Yeah, he was a guy who never made, I think, more than 15% or so in a single year. And here we are, February 2007. He makes 66% in a month, and his clients call up and they think it's a typo. They think it's 6.6%. They can't believe it. And his own, as you say, his own colleagues, employees, Paolo Pellegrini, who never made much in his whole life, had very little in his bank account, and you can't blame him for urging Paulson to take some money off the table. His clients, his investors started getting nervous. Well, you must be taking too much risk here because you're up 66%. And to John Paulson's credit, he didn't take money off the table. He took a little bit, but not too much. And frankly, the trade transformed. I would argue that until then, it was a beautiful trade with an asymmetrical trade, and which is one you want to look for as a trader. And John Paulson emphasizes this in our conversations. It was an asymmetrical trade, very little downside when you're buying credit default swaps. It was basically costing about 7% a year and a huge upside. But I would argue that in early 2007, it transformed into a riskier trade because at that point he had made several $1 billion. And if he had blown it, if the housing market had recovered, if the subprime market had come back, then he would be known as the guy who almost pulled off the trade of the century and yet blew it. And he wasn't really concerned about that. He's not as worried about what people think about him. He's really focused on pulling off big trades or impressive trades and worrying about the downside. We didn't really get into it as much as we could have, but he was just as focused on the downside and making sure there wasn't too much downside on this trade. And that's what made it a beautiful trade.